I mean, that's a pocket and a half, isn't it? You know, you can get plenty of snacks and, you know, seditious reading material in there if you so wished. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel, Blue Lady Couture. Today I'm doing a special video, and a video that's a little bit different to what I've normally done before on this channel, and that is I'm going to do a costume study of this rather gorgeous number that I have here on my mannequin. This is a very recent addition to my very small collection, but my collection nonetheless, of original costume pieces. And this is a turn of the century morning gown that I picked up a couple of weeks ago at an antique fair. It was actually a vintage fair, so I didn't go there with any expectations of really picking up anything earlier than, you know, 1930s, 1940s or something like that. And of course, as always happens when you're not looking for something, that is when something catches your eye, and I couldn't leave this behind. What do I know of the gown? I bought it off a seller who had a lot of vintage pieces on her stall, including a very, very small selection of, you know, at first glance what appeared to be early pieces, Victorian pieces, and that's always, you know, that's always going to catch my eye. You know? And after I looked the pieces over on the stall, as you do, I realised what excellent condition this in. This is why it's on the mannequin, because it's in such awesome condition that I feel safe and happy to put it on the mannequin. And don't worry, I will be taking it off the mannequin to do some more close-up detail shots very, very shortly. But yeah, so I was obviously rummaging through this stall holder's items that she had for sale, and we found the bodice. We also found another bodice, and there was an evening coat, and then we found the skirt separate to the bodice. And at that point, I suddenly realised that the seller was selling these pieces separately, which, yeah, that's sacrilege in my book. But the other bodice that the lady had on the stall, there was no skirt. So clearly, that piece, that gown, would have originally been there together as a set. It's been separated, and you know they're never going to come together again. That is that gown ruined as far as I'm concerned. So when I saw that she had these two items together, and you know was selling them separately, I was like, no, I have to save this dress. So that's what I did. I saved the dress, and after a brief conversation with the lady, all she was able to tell me was that she had picked the gowns up. She bought a collection of, including these Victorian gowns, about 2 years ago. So although admittedly we have been in a pandemic and she's not really been to any trade events, she has had these items on her stall, in her stock, for about 2 years. And I have to say, they were just hanging on hangers. They had no protection on them, or not, they were just hanging on hangers with all her other vintage garments. And after I had agreed on the purchase price, which I got for a very, very good price, I have to say, it's one of the other reasons that I did buy this, which I will cover a little bit more in a second. Yeah, when we had sort of made the deal and I'd agreed to purchase them, and she said, oh, do you want them put them in a bag? She pulled out, you know, a supermarket shopping bag. And I always cried. I was like, no, you can't put the bodice. No, you can't. Luckily, I did have a bag with me. As I say, I didn't go to the event with the express intention of purchasing a lot of vintage garments. It was just one of those things, you know, if I have to see something, I had a bag to pop some little bits and pieces in, perhaps some accessories and that kind of thing. I had no intention of buying a full, you know, Victorian morning gown. So I had a small cotton bag with me, and I was able to, I very carefully folded up the bodice as best I could and popped that in the bag. And then the skirt, again, I got the lady to sort of carefully, I say carefully, it was, but we got the skirt folded up and put in this other bag that she was able to provide. I love the idea of collecting, you know, vintage garments and things like this. They take up a lot of room to store because they do need to be stored ideally in boxes. They shouldn't be, you know, hung on hangers or anything like that. They need to be stored wrapped in tissue paper in acid-free boxes. And they're, you know, they're big items. They're a lot of fabric, so they do take up a lot of space. And if you have multiple items in your collection, then again, space and storage is an issue. So I don't have a lot of these items. I only have a very, very small collection, and for that reason I've never really committed to buying a Victorian piece before. Also, to get one in as good a condition as this is, it's kind of beyond my budget really of what I would want to spend on an item which, you know, essentially is just going to be kept in storage. So yeah, so I did get these for a very, very good price. Yeah, so if you are watching this as part of the premiere on the day it goes out, then please do pop some comments in the comments boxes and in the chat. I will be available in the chat to answer any questions. But if you're watching this, you know, at a point in the future, then again, please do comment down below. Please like the video, and if you want to see more of what I do on my channel, please do subscribe. I do lots of costumey, sewing-y goodness, so do head on over and see some of my other videos of what I've been making previously. I thought I'd take the opportunity to grab my camera and, you know, show you guys in some more detail all these lovely, lovely, beautiful details, and some, you know, focusing on some of the construction on the inside. We can have a look inside the bodice and inside the skirt, and I just hope you find that really interesting, because it's something that fascinates me, and is one of the reasons, you know, why I got into doing what I do. It's a morning gown, obviously being all in black, it's very highly likely to be a morning gown with a little bit of white detail, which implies it's not full mourning, you know, straight after someone has died. This might be several months down the line when you start to go through different colours of mourning, different shades of mourning, and of course it depends on your relationship to the person who has died as well. It was a very, very intricate process. So in terms of dates for this dress, I've said turn of the century. Give or take a few years, I'm putting it in a very narrow date of between about 1898 and about 1902, 1903. So there's some features which are a little bit more Edwardian, and there's some which could indicate it could be slightly earlier, and the lady who designed it was perhaps, or the maker was a little bit more fashion forward. But it's that kind of that transitional period over the turn of the century where the fashions are changing. It's not got the big poofy sleeves of the classic 1890s look. It's not quite gone full Edwardian, in that it's still got a very fitted waist, and feels a bit more 1890s than Edwardian. So yeah, I'm saying I'm saying Victorian, I'm saying, you know, Edwardian, turn of the century, but it's in that kind of that very narrow dateline, just around the turn of the century. Right, without further ado, let's have a closer look at this beautiful, beautiful gown, shall we? Okay, so here we go then. So I'm going to start with the bodice and show you a little bit of an overview, and then we'll get into some of the details and all the beautiful little features of this really rather gorgeous example of a very late Victorian, possibly a very early Edwardian bodice. I appreciate that this is a black bodice with black trimmings on it, so I will try and do my very, very best to show you some of the details on it, but hopefully I'll get the lighting and the camera angles right, just so you can see just how lovely this is. So we've got a beautiful high-necked collar here, made in the same fabric as the rest of the bodice, this black striped fabric. So yeah, a high-necked collar with this lovely little bit of cotton lace detail just sitting around the very top of the neckline. The neckline also has this additional little, it's kind of like a faux turnover on it, I suppose is how I would describe it, which again is made in the same base fabric, and the edge is trimmed with a very, very delicate silk chiffon ribbon, which is ruched up onto the edge of this curved line here, which you can just see because the underside is lined in the same silk as the collar here, and you're just getting that little flash of white detail just around the edge of that collar line. Then coming down a bit lower onto the decorative collar detail on the front of the bodice, and this is actually the most fragile part of the entire garment. As you'll see when we go inside, the rest of the garment is in absolutely incredible condition. Barely a mark or a tear or any signs of wear on it. But this collar, the white silk, well, it would have originally been white, obviously it has discoloured a little bit with age, but this white silk has started to shatter. I do apologise if my camera goes a little bit in and out of focus, but hopefully I will notice, and I'll keep checking and just make sure that when I'm showing you the little details, I will just come back and show you that. So yeah, so you can see just here this silk is just starting to shatter a little bit. So the collar is made up of, so the silk upper layer, to give this really rather distinctive effect with the black trimming on top. The underside, as we can see there, is in the same base fabric as the rest of the gown. And then we have this, essentially it's quite simple really, this applied trimmed detail of again this silk chiffon ribbon alternated with this row of sequins and beads, and this follows through on other parts of the jacket as well, which I will show you shortly. But this beaded trim, you can just see down here, and again on other parts of the bodice, which I'll show you, is mounted on a cotton base tape. So this has obviously been a pre-made trim that has been applied, and I'll see if I can get in nice and close to show you. This chiffon is so delicate. Can you see how sheer that is? And I think it is a ready-made chiffon ribbon, because it's got this finished edge on it. So this hasn't been cut and left raw. It's not cut and turned over. It's been woven with this finished edge on each side, so it's a little bit denser. It gives you can see that difference in the colour there, and then you've got the really fine chiffon just in the middle between those two edges. And this is just simply just gathered up and stitched in place. So yeah, a really, really simple effect when you think about it. There's nothing sort of fancy here at all, is there? Just looks so striking of the black against the white. So then, coming down a bit further, the next layer we have, again, it's an additional piece of kind of collar detailing. It's this netting which is draped over the shoulders. Absolutely beautiful. It's in incredible condition. I can hardly find a hole or a tear or anything in it. Absolutely beautiful. This kind of very, very fine, would have been machine made by this date, but very, very fine tulle netting with this little spot detail on it, beautifully edged as well. So this is just, you can just see it is, sorry, I'll just bring the camera back down. Hopefully you can see that. Again, I appreciate this is black on black, but you can just see that there is, it's stitched on here. It's just simply kind of pleated up, gathered up, and stitched down along here. I expect originally it would have sat neatly underneath the collar when it was worn. Obviously with time and how this has been stored, the collar's got folded in, but yeah, but it means that we can now see how beautifully it just is stitched underneath here, and then it's stitched down around the front of the bodice, underneath the front of the collar, and then it extends down here through the waistband of the jacket, and we have these little decorative tails hanging off the bottom here. And again, there's nothing wrong with this lace. It's just in perfect condition. Really is quite incredible. You can just see here where they've turned the edge over. Can you see that? Oh no, hang on, I'm not. Can you see here where they've turned the edge over and stitched it down? Oh, I'm just going to point out what I remember, because I've forgotten to say. I am not wearing gloves, but my hands are very, very clean. I've just scrubbed and cleaned them before doing this. Yes, I am wearing my wedding rings and my engagement ring, but I've taken off my other rings, which have a kind of an exposed jewellery, gems on them. This these gems on here they're not like a claw setting or anything like that. They're set into the ring. It's a particular type of mounting. I can't remember what it's called, but yeah, there's nothing on those rings that will catch on the dress. And also have made sure that my nails aren't catchy or anything like that. So yeah, just so if you were concerned. And yeah, I'm not wearing gloves because again, I just don't want like the cotton of gloves or anything like that to catch on any of this delicate trimming or anything like that. It would be very easy to do. And also, as long as your hands are clean, you know, it's I think it's important to feel the texture of the fabric as well, so you can help ascertain, you know, how it feels, how it moves, and you just have a little bit more finite sense of the touch as well, compared to when you're wearing gloves. You might not notice if you catch it or something like that. So yeah, so that's just why I'm still wearing my rings, if you were wondering. Right, now where were we? So we just looked at this beautiful, the lace trimming, which comes all the way down here, and there's another row of this beaded and sequin trim extending down here, which extends down to the waist. And here you can see where this is again just some of the very slight damage. It really is that we have some of the sequins and beads are missing down here. Then in here, so this hook in here, you can see that is on the centre back of the garment on the inside. So you've got one edge of the front bodice here, the other front edge is here, and this very centre front edge has a further row of this beautiful gathered chiffon running up it, and on one side here it has come apart, it has come off, and is loose, but that would have run up. It runs up from the waist right up here at the center front of the bodice, and then it turns and creates the edge on the collar here, and it would have been the same on the other side. But yeah, this is just a bit damaged here, and just say it's come apart here, but it does mean that we can actually see the inside here, the hooks for the hooks and loops for the closure are just tucked in there. You can see that. I do apologise, I'm watching what I'm doing and trying to film this at the same time. Yeah, so there's hooks and bars in there, and on this side we can just see where are they? Oh, there we are, the hooks running up there. I will open this up more in a moment just so we can see the more detail inside. But yeah, so it fastens with hook and bar closures down the centre front, and they continue right up the front of the bodice to the neckline as well. And there's further hooks and bars on the collar. So yeah, so this would have been a very high-necked, very fitted bodice. So coming back down, you can see the rest of the bodice here, which is in this beautiful, beautiful base fabric. Hopefully you can see some of the detail on that, where that's catching the light. Absolutely stunning fabric, so eye-catching. And then here we have the waistband. So the bodice is set into this waistband, which you can see here would cross over and fasten over here. There is a hook and eye there, or hook there, and then you've got the hook on the hook there, and then the eye or the bar on the waistband over here. So that would fasten across there and create this lovely little pointed front with beading following around, and then the little tails hanging out down here. This slightly dipped waistline is one reason why I think it's possibly more into the 1900s than the 1890s, because in the 1890s you tend to see more of a straight across horizontal waistline, and you don't start to get the dip until sort of just into the turn of the century. But I think the dateline on this dress is very, very tight. It falls somewhere between 1898 and about 1902. About 1902 you start to see the waistline loses this fitted bodice effect, and you start to get the more gathered in, slightly kind of the pouter pigeon kind of effect that you see in with the S-bend silhouette coming in. So which is why I think this is just prior to that, and could possibly just back into the 1890s. But yeah, in that very, very tight dateline just across over the turn of the century. Okay, so now coming over to the sleeves. Look at the shape on these. So that's not how it's laying, how it's folded. So again, one of the reasons why I'm thinking this could be late 1890s is we've got a little bit of volume up here, but it's not the full huge, leg of mutton volume that you see in the mid 1890s. It's later where the volume starts to come in much closer, and you start to see details like these little pleats. Can you see that? So we've got 1, 2, 3 pleats in there, and then we've got little pleats over the top of the shoulder seam as well. So obviously this has got a bit flat and squashed over time, but originally this would have had a little bit of volume up the top, but not a huge amount. And then obviously the sleeve is quite fitted coming down the upper arm, and then tapers into this lovely narrow cuff, which then flares out a little bit at the bottom here, and it's finished quite simply with a band of the beaded trimming again. So it's actually then just faced with this white ribbon on the inside. It's not fully faced in, say, the white silk like you might expect, but it just gives that slight, that hint of white just around the edge, just to add a little bit of a definition to the edge of the cuff. And then it's finished with this beautiful, beautiful lace again. So we've got a beautiful lace ruffle here, which obviously matches the lace on the upper part of the bodice. You can see again, it's just stitched in at that point there, it would be on about the wrist at the narrowest point there. And I'd expect if this dress had been worn quite a bit, this kind of lace on the cuffs is the kind of thing that it's going to get caught on stuff, it's going to get snagged, it's going to get worn, and it's really not, there's nothing on there there's no damage at all. So yeah, I think this dress has been worn very, very lightly, if even at all. I'm not convinced it's been worn more than just possibly just to try on, or just for a few hours. It's not been worn for long periods of time at all. And you can see the cuff is split at the wrist there, so it just gives you a little bit of flare. So this cuff would extend down a little bit over your hand. Okay, so I've flipped the bodice over so we can just have a quick look at the back details before we open up and have a look at all the gorgeous construction details inside. So again, starting at the top of the bodice with the collar and high neck collar right around the back, and you can see these little turnover kind of faux details that are applied on there. It's split at the centre back, what would have been the centre back. So you get that kind of scalloped effect up there. You've got the cotton lace just continuing around the back of the neckline there as well. And then here you can see this beautiful netting, which just comes around and just drapes over the back of the shoulder just slightly, and it's just caught in with some stitching just into the base of the collar line there. And yeah, that would just sit beautifully over the back of the shoulder there, like so, and you see it on the other side there. So then coming down, we can see the shape of the panelling here. We've got some beautiful pattern matching with the stripe effect, which tapers down into the waist point. So the actual waist is about here somewhere, as you can see, and then it extends down into a little point at the back, and then we've got the waistband detail following around from the front with the beaded detail on it, and coming down to the little point again. These two pieces here, that's from the front of the bodice, so that's not, you wouldn't see that on the back of the dress when it's being worn. So we've got a centre front seam. There is a seam down here as well. Just see there. And you can also feel the boning under those as well, which we shall have a closer look at when we get inside. I'll just pull out a little bit just so you can see that shaping and that beautiful detailing on the pattern matching with the stripes. Whoa, I love a bit of striped pattern matching. If you follow this channel, you'll know how much I have a slight obsession with pattern matching stripes. So then we can come over to the sleeves again. So here on this side you can see actually a little bit more detail, these 3 pleats just in the very top of the sleeve head there, and the gathering over the top on the top of the sleeve. We've got the seam line is coming down here, and now I'm fairly certain, yes, this is a 2-piece sleeve. So we have the sleeve seam here, and there's a sleeve seam just right along where it's sat folded. At the moment you can just see it down there. And again, you can see this beautiful shaping here in this panel. So it is cut on a very curved sleeve shaping. Then this part of the sleeve here, you can just see it's gathered in on the elbow at this point here, which just helps to give that nice fit around that natural bend in the elbow. If you stand with your hands down by your side, you're very unlikely to have a completely dead straight arm. You will have a very slight natural bend in it, and that gets accentuated in garments of this period. So yeah, you've got that beautiful little elbow pleating in there. So that's the outside of the bodice. So we shall flip her over again and we shall have a look inside. So here we are then. This is the inside, and look at this. This is absolutely incredible. I love these kind of details when you can get inside the bodice and see all the boning channels and the seam lines, and it's just, yeah, this makes me so excited. And look, we have a name. There is a name on the waist tape of the lady. It's a Mrs. Butterworth of Lord Street, Southport. So how exciting is that? That's just amazing. It kind of just, I don't know, it's just, there's something about, obviously this has been handmade by Mrs. Butterworth, or perhaps someone that she employed or worked with. How incredible is that? So yeah, right, where should we start in here? I mean, goodness me, there's a lot to get through, so do bear with me. So the bodice is lined, as we can see, in a oh god, what's the term? I've forgotten the word. Where they make it shiny oh god, what's it called? I've completely gone blank. I do apologise. I've completely gone blank on yep, I've forgotten. I think roller cotton mechanised. I can't remember what the term. I shall pop it in if I remember what it is. But this kind of slightly shiny, chintzy cotton, which you see a lot in bodices of this period. It is a black, but on my camera it's looking a little bit purple. It's a slightly different shade of black to the black of the outer fabric. But that actually means that you can probably actually see the details a bit more. So, but yeah, it is a black lining. So then over here we can see now very clearly the hooks for the front fastening. These are all original. I don't think there's any missing, and they're all original as far as I can see. They're all the same, and they are all secured in place with this line of I think it's probably a cotton twill tape, which just covers over the stitching details, and all you see is the little hook part as well. Here you've got the edge of the waist tape, which has got on it. So the waist tape obviously secures the bodice around the waistline of the wearer and stops strain being put on the bodice itself. You can see here where it's attached to across these boning channels with these simple cross stitches. And on the other side of the waistband, we have just a very simple single hook there, which I hope you can see. So in total, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 bones in here, and these are, they're probably whalebone. They're all very well secured in. I can't see any that are poking out or anything like that. You can see they've all covered in, again, probably a cotton tape, and they have this stitching. I'm sorry if the light's gone a bit yellow. It's just focusing on the yellow there. This lovely little simple flossing detail just to secure the ends, and the bones have been covered first, and then can you see they've just been stitched in. The bones extend down into this is the facing behind the waistband, and the bones extend right down into there on all of these as well, so you won't get any ugly rolling up of the waistband or anything like that. None of them extend up any further than sort of the underarm point. This is the side seam, and you can see the bone where it's sitting just there. That's the underarm point of the sleeve there. All of these, so where the seams have been turned through, it's got a very wide seam allowance, and actually I think this has been taken in at some point. You can just see the scarring of where the original seam was there on that crease of where the seam's been pressed previously. Then this scalloped effect here, which you can see on all of the seams, especially over here on the centre back, that is obviously to enable the seam to curve into the shape of the body, and the edge has just been whipped over by hand to attach it to the lining. When I recreate bodices like this in modern days, I normally overlock these edges just for ease, because me working on my own, I don't have time to hand whip stitch down every single seam like that. That's time consuming, people. So that's incredible. And although technically the overlocker was invented in it is Victorian. The actual invention of the overlocker is Victorian. It's pre-1900. It obviously doesn't come into general use until sort of the 20s, 30s, really. You're still getting hand finishing details on here. So the majority of the construction of this bodice would have been machine sewn. Obviously, sewing machines were very prevalent by this stage, but detail things like this was still hand sewn. And you can see there's the edge of the waistband here, that is whip stitched in by hand, because obviously you don't want the machine stitching necessarily showing on the outside. It just gives that a nice neat finish. All right, so we can have a little closer look in here at the armholes and what I can see of the sleeves. Again, they're lined in the same cotton as the rest of the bodice. You can see the seam line there on that sleeve. Again, that's possibly been taken in as well, because it's a lot wider down here, but you won't be able to see that in the shadow, but it's wider down here than it is up here. So there's possibly been some taking in on these sleeve seams as well. But I mean, look at here, this is obviously the underarm, and there is absolutely no sign of any kind of wearing on here. There's no sweat staining, or marks from being worn against obviously against the body, but obviously against the chemise. But this area is so prone to deterioration, and once it's been worn, it very, very easily marks. it's, yeah, and there is nothing. I honestly, I do not think this gown has been worn more than a handful of times, and even then, not for a long period of time. Because there is just nothing. There is nothing wrong with it. Even on the back of the collar. If we just come back up onto the collar here, and you can see this lovely machine cotton lacing, which is obviously a pre-made trim with this this white edging on it, which allows it to be stitched into the collar. So there is a little bit of marking, here. It's obviously it's discoloured with age. This would have been a lovely white originally, but that's possibly from wear. It could also be just possibly from where it's been hung on hangers, obviously, and this is exposed and just sees a lot of just wear and tear generally. But yeah, there is. But in terms of, there's no wear kind of here around the collar sits right at the base of the neck or anything like that. It's pristine. And also we've got the hanging loop there as well, is still in place. These little white bits here is just where the silk of the collar is just showing through, where it's attached to the seams. So this is the other side of the front closure. So as I said, the hooks are hidden inside here. So it's got a little kind of a little placket on it, which means obviously you don't get any gapping, because that's one of the things with hooks and eyes. You do get that they are prone to gapping a little bit, and you kind of can see through to what's behind them. So they've just put a placket on here, just so you don't get anything like that. It's fully securely closed down the front. Again, we've got a line of this cotton tape, just I suppose to give it a bit of strength, and sort of stop it warping out of shape. You can actually see that there is a curved shape here, so obviously it's very fitted to the waist, and then it curves up and out over the bust area, just to give you a little bit more fitted shaping over that area. And you can see it also on this side as well, if I show you. And again, that's another reason why I'm putting this, it could fall into the 1890s, is because of this very fitted shaping. Like I say, it's things start to get a little bit looser in the Edwardian area, and it's kind of softer. This still has that kind of very formal Victorian feel to it. So if you've got any questions, if you're watching this as the premiere, I will be in the comments down below, so you can ask any questions, and if I can, I will answer them to the best of my ability. Just coming back to the name on the waistband tape inside Mrs. Butterworth, I have tried to do a little bit of research on that, a bit of Google foo, and nothing has come up. So it's a little bit of a mystery of who this Mrs. Butterworth, the dressmaker, was. She's clearly a lady who knows what she's doing, and she's well established enough that she has her name, in the waist tape, the same as some of the big high-end couturiers. So yeah, so she's not. I don't think she's running, a small business out of her back parlour, sort of running up dresses for local ladies. This is a beautiful, beautiful, high quality, high end, fashionable garment. So yeah, I will keep you posted if I find out any more about the mysterious Mrs. Butterworth. I will definitely let you know. So here is the skirt laid out as best as I can on my table. So I do apologise that I won't be able to show you this very easily in full. I don't know why my camera has decided it's going to go yellow, but it's going yellow. I do apologise. But yes, here we go. Look at that. It's absolutely stunning. Oh, and then we're going to go back into the right colour. So this skirt is in and of itself very, very simple. It's just a 3-panel skirt. So we've got the centre front panel and then 2 panels on the back, pleated up into the waistband. And yeah, it's just such simple construction. We can see we do have a panel line here. You can just see where the stripe of the base fabric is just disappearing off into the seam line there. Just the same on the other side. And then we come down along this beautiful, beautiful fabric. And then we have these beautiful little applique
bow details on the bottom here, and my camera just wants to be really yellow. I'm sorry. But these are just beautiful. So I'm trying to get in as close as I can without losing focus, but hopefully here you will just be able to see where just some of the sequins have come away, and you can see the net base behind the sequins in there. So these would have been possibly a pre-made or pre-bought sequin piece that could be cut out, and then it's been applied onto the base of the skirt, and then we've got another one. Where is it? Over there. And they're opposites as well, so they make a nice pair. So these are made with blackened metal sequins. I don't think they would have been silver, which is tarnished. That doesn't fit with the style of the dress. That would just be so garish to have silver sequins, I think. So I think they are blackened metal sequins. And then we've got these little teeny tiny black glass beads. And there is no further additional trimming on this skirt. It is just the beauty of the fabric, and these applique details that they just speak for themselves, don't they? You don't need any additional trimming on there. And obviously you can see here that the back of the skirt is longer than the front, so it would have kicked out into not a huge train, but it would have certainly sort of flared out nicely over the back of the petticoat. And obviously you can see here the lining fabric as well. The skirt is flat lined in this mercerized, that's the word, mercerized cotton. I'm thinking mechanized, it's mechanized, mercerized. So mercerized cotton, but it's a different cotton to the bodice lining. This you can see is very definitely a chocolate brown colour, and it has this stripe effect running through it as well. You can also see some piecing details here, which doesn't, the back of the skirt, there's no piecing there. That's the centre back seam line. So the lining has been pieced. And you can see the internal seam has the same treatment as the bodice, where it's been whipped over by hand to finish off that raw edge. This is about the only bit of damage that that I can see on the skirt, is where it's just worn along the very edge where it's folded over here. You can just see the horsehair braid, which is used to stiffen the hem and obviously give it that nice flare out at the very bottom. And although we don't use actual horsehair braid anymore, I do use a nylon synthetic version, very, very similar to this for my modern interpretations of these types of full beautiful skirts. So it's lovely to just see that little bit of detail in there. And I can actually feel when I'm handling this, where's it gone? Yeah, my finger's just under there, and I can feel that there's a stitching line, and the bottom section of the skirt here feels just slightly stiffer, so I suspect there is a tarlatan or similar kind of interlining in the very hem of the skirt there as well, again just to give a bit more body and volume to the hem of the skirt. Okay, so I've just flipped the top of the skirt down just so you can see the waistband in a bit more detail here as well. And it's so simple, and it's so not bulky, it's not chunky, it's so small. It's barely a centimetre, not quite a centimetre and a half, I don't think. Waistband on there. We've got a kind of a cotton twill here, which is I'm presuming it would have possibly been black originally, but it's a very, or it could be a dark brown, but it's discoloured black, or it's a very dark brown, but the inside is definitely a very dark brown. And this here on the outside of the waistband is a a cotton twill, I think, and then on the inside of the waistband here, it's actually different fabric, so it's not a single piece of fabric that that's folded over to encase the top of the skirt here. They've used two separate fabrics, and you can see the stab stitching lines down here, and there's some stitching just down there as well, which is where the outside of the waistband would have been stitched through, so you don't see this on this kind of stitching on the outside. These two little marks here is just this cross which marks the center front of the skirt, and then here we have the center back. We've got this whacking great hook here, look at that, and that lines up with the one that's in the waistband of the bodice, so that just anchors the bodice and the skirt together. Obviously helps to stop the back of the skirt dragging down, because obviously this kind of style of skirt where you've got a lot of fullness or kind of sweeping towards the back, it makes it quite heavy and draggy at the back, so that helps just keep the skirt secured and in place underneath the bodice. The skirt fastens with two hooks and eyes, so again that just helps with the sagging and kind of keeping that secure and flat. Then there is no further fastening down the placket, so you're just relying on the overlap of the fabrics to keep it closed. So this placket is a slightly separate piece. As you can see, it is lined. You can see some more seams from piecing of the lining fabrics as well. We've got hanging loops up here on the waistband too. And then, look, what is this, people? What is this? It's a pocket! There's a pocket in this skirt. Amazing. And then if we look over here, because I was thinking, oh, well, maybe there are two pockets, one on each side. Well, there is. But it's a teeny tiny little pocket. I mean, what even? No, legitimately, that is a pocket. Look, if I flip it over. Oh, where's the seam gone? I can't find it now. It's here, look. I just get my fingers in there. That's the size of the pocket, people. It's there, that's the width of my fingers. So I'm assuming that is like a little watch pocket or something like that, because I can't think of anything else that would fit in there. It is teeny tiny. So there you can see the insides of the pocket there. If I hold my hands out, that's the base of the pocket there. Whereas this pocket over here, I mean, look at this. This is, I mean, that's a pocket and a half, isn't it? You know, you can get plenty of snacks and, you know, seditious reading material in there if you so wished. So I've just flipped the front of the skirt up so we can see a little bit more of the lining and the inside of the skirt for you. As I was doing that, if we look over here, this is the hem at the side, which has actually got quite a sizable hole here where it's worn, where it's folded over. And we can actually see, if I carefully open that, can you see how far up what I thought was the horsehair braid? I said a little while ago that I thought there was a strip of horsehair braid, and I thought there was another layer of something in here which was interfacing the skirt up to this stitch line here, which is 13 inches above the hem. But yeah, when I look inside here, what I thought was the horsehair braid is actually this interfacing fabric, this interlining fabric, which is extending right the way up there, and then it's folded over. You can see if I just separate that carefully. It's folded over to create the hem, so it's not a separate horsehair braid in here. And if we come back down to the hem over here, it's a 1 3/4 of an inch hem turn up. And then obviously it's folded on, so it's a 2 inch turn up in total. And I can see there's no seam along this edge here. So it is just folded, and then you can see where the excess has been eased in because of these little sort of racking up lines here. We can see more of the piecing panels in here as well. So that's obviously the piece right at the bottom there. This is the stitching line for this interfacing fabric, and then we've got another piecing line here. So that implies that the width of the fabric, of this lining fabric, is from here to here, which I shall just grab my tape measure. So it's just shy of 19 inches wide, this fabric. And then if we come up to here and have a look at this seam line here, so this is the front seam. So you see that's the applique bow there, which is mounted on the front panel. So we can see here that actually this is the selvage edge of the fabric. So this side here, that's the centre front panel, and that is cut on a slight angle. But on this side, they have matched that up to the straight of grain along the selvage, and obviously that doesn't need any finishing because it's the selvage edge, so there's no additional finishing down there. So that means they're doing that classic technique that they use in this period of when joining seams together, putting a not 100% straight on the grain seam against an actual straight seam. Which just helps prevent any stretching of these seams, because if it's slightly on the bias, these seams could be liable to stretch out a little bit under the weight of the fabric and the gown. So that's really interesting. Yeah, and then you can also see here the stitching lines, which is just where the applique is tacked on. So it's just, they're not particularly close together, tiny stitches or anything like that, but it's hand stitched in place right through both layers of the fabric. So it's obviously applied after, and you can see it's caught there as well over the seam. So it's the appliques have been applied after the dress has been constructed completely. I did think it was interesting that the most amount of wear on the hem is along the sides. This is the centre front here, and there's hardly a little bit of wear, but not as much as there is on the sides of the skirt here. And the back of the hem here is almost pristine. There's hardly any wear on it at all, so we can surmise that although this dress has been worn very lightly, clearly at the front it's coming just high enough off the ground that it's not being caught or dragging in any way, but at the sides it is clearly dragging along right on that edge there. But on the back, it must be that it's either not trailing enough to be getting particularly dirty or damaged, or obviously it's been worn with a petticoat and potentially a dust ruffle, which of course is keeping this off the worst of the ground, and that has of course preserved it. So I thought that's quite an interesting kind of look at how the skirt has worn and how it's been worn. So clearly because it's the same on the opposite side of the skirt as well, that this is the point where it's most worn. So that's quite interesting that this is the point that was obviously dragging on the ground the most. So I've just flipped the skirt right over so we can have a better look at the back of the skirt on the outside. Sorry, my camera's doing that thing where it's going yellow again, just it passes under the lights. But you can see the beautiful pattern matching up this back seam. And there is actually a seam here as well on each side. So again, this skirt panel has had to be pieced. It's not as pieced as the lining underneath is, but obviously they couldn't get the full dramatic scale of this skirt out of just a single width of fabric, because as I just mentioned, the seam where are we up here, this seam up here, which is the front seams. There's no side seams, remember, so we've got the front seam for this panel is cut on the straight. And then obviously you can see where it's curving around the waist and coming down the back seam line here. Obviously it is not on the straight, it's not on the true bias either, but it's definitely not on the straight. And obviously that means that they've had to add in a piece here because the fabric isn't wide enough to accommodate the full expanse of the skirt. Because I mean, look at it, it's huge. It just, I'm not sure if this comes across on camera just how much fabric there is in this skirt. Considering it's only a 3-panel skirt, like I say, there is no side seam and there is no additional, waist to floor seam anywhere along here. There is a dart. If we just look on the inside here, so that's the front seam there with the little diddy pocket, and just a bit further along, where is it? There is a dart, and that's repeated on the other side, I believe. It says, yep, so there is a dart there, and then you can see where this panel is. There is a pleat there, and then the rest is gathered. And that is it. That is the construction of the skirt. It's so simple and straightforward, really. And I say, and the beauty of it is this incredible fabric, and with the stripe effect running through it, obviously gives it a really dramatic effect where they've matched up the lines along the centre back there. It's just truly beautiful. So it's a few days now since I filmed that last little clip that you just saw, and oh my goodness, I've got so much information to tell you. I'm so excited. All about Mrs. Butterworth. I'm so convinced that there had to be something out there about Mrs. Butterworth. The quality of the gown, the fact it had her name in the waist tape, that just implied that there was some kind of level of establishment there that, it warranted existing somewhere. There was a dressmaking establishment for Mrs. Butterworth somewhere in Southport. So I thought, right, okay, we'll go back to the basics and I'll just do a search for Butterworth on the 1901 census in Southport, just see what comes up, and at least, if I can just get a name of, this Butterworth as a dressmaker in 1901, I'm 95% certain that is going to be her. Dozens of Butterworths came up, but because I'm not a member of Ancestry or any other of these other sites, and because I couldn't go to the physical records office, I couldn't get any further. You have to pay to access the records. They're behind a paywall. So I was like, okay. So I put a shout out to my friends on Facebook just to say if there was anybody out there who had access to Ancestry.com or something like that, and could view the 1901 census records, would they mind just doing a search for me and just be able to clarify that I'd found the right person, the right Butterworths, and just to help me give a bit more context to this dress that I'd found. Huge thank you to my friend Amanda, who jumped in and said, yes, I can do some research for you. Oh my goodness, guys, the stuff she found out is amazing. So my friend Amanda, she works for a university, so she has access behind all the paywalls for research purposes and things like that. So she was just able to go, yeah, here's what I found just by searching the name Butterworth and the appropriate dates, and oh my goodness, guys, it's incredible. So yes, we did find Butterworth on the 1901 census. We also found Butterworths on the 1911 census, and we have a dressmaker, a Mrs. Jane Butterworth, who describes herself in her profession as a milliner and dressmaker. And that was her. I'd suggested that, it would be really nice if you could find her an advert for her business or something in the local newspapers. And Amanda went to the British newspaper archives and put in the name Butterworth. And up came lots of delicious and exciting facts that I'm going to share with you now. So we first found Mrs. Butterworth in the Liverpool Echo, where she was advertising in 1899 for a second hand. So another person to come into the business and help run it and help do the work. And that gave us an address. So we found an address for the business in Southport, which straight away we were on Google Maps seeing if it still existed.
And that led me down another kind of little rabbit hole, just a little bit of local history about Southport. So for those of you who don't know, Southport is a seaside town up on the northwest coast, not too far from Blackpool, and it's quite close to Liverpool and Manchester, so that kind of northwest area of England. And yeah, it was a quintessential, your typical British Victorian seaside town. But when we were looking on Google Maps, so first we went to the modern Google Maps just to see what the street looks like today, and whether the building still exists and things like that, because obviously a lot of things can change in 120 years. And we did find some evidence of the building, but there was kind of a gap between the street numbers of where it should be. So we were not 100% sure where the actual business was. But the fascinating thing about Southport is, as I said, it's this quintessential Victorian seaside town. But during the 1870s into the 1880s, it underwent a massive redevelopment, especially the main shopping street, Lord Street, which is the street that's on the label in the dress. Lord Street appears to be kind of the main shopping street, the main high street in the town. Yeah, it underwent massive redevelopment in the sort of the 1880s, and the town was basically rebranded as this beautiful Victorian resort town. So when you look at the buildings on Lord Street, they're absolutely beautiful Victorian buildings, red brick buildings, or beautiful architecture, and a lot of the shops, their frontage over the pavement, they have all these beautiful glass canopies and wrought iron work canopies. So it would have been absolutely beautiful, in the time. These were obviously created so that people were, when they were on holiday, enjoying the lovely British summer weather. Which, undoubtedly it's going to tip it down with rain. You can enjoy, your shopping down Lord Street in Southport and not get wet. And, it's just this beautiful little ingenious in Victorian kind of things that they did. So Southport, back in the day, back in the Victorian era, was a beautiful go-to seaside destination. Don't know where it ranked in terms of whether... Obviously, certain resorts attract different types of people. The impression I always got was that Blackpool was the place where perhaps the more working class, the lower classes went for their holidays. So whether Southport was a little bit more higher end, where people with a bit more money might have gone, a kind of a bit more exclusive kind of seaside resort. I'm not 100% sure, possibly, but that's the impression I got from the buildings and the way obviously the town had just completely revamped itself and rebuilt half its street, and had put all these beautiful facades on the front of their buildings. So also while I was researching the street, I found things like postcards and photographs from the era as well. Again, you can't quite see the shop names, obviously black and white photos or artist impressions on postcards, that kind of thing. But you just get this sense of this street where her business was located next to a hotel, and you had the electric tram was running down the street outside as well. So it would have been a really busy thoroughfare. It was the focal point of the business district of Southport. So she was right there in the heart of it. So I was like, yes, this is what I knew it. She wasn't just working as a dressmaker, out of her back parlour. And then we found some more information. We found her in the newspapers again, but she'd been a bit naughty. She got in trouble. In 1899, again, she was fined 5 shillings on 2 counts for keeping women working after 5 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. And then we found her again in 1891, actually. She was again also fined for not displaying a copy of the Factories Act in her workroom. And the fine that she received in 1889 for keeping women working, that's also falls under the Factories Act. So this is another exciting historical rabbit hole that I then fell down. The Factories Act was introduced in 1883. And it's an act of parliament. It's a law. So that came in following obviously the Industrial Revolution through the late 18th and early 19th century, where there was a huge shift here in Britain, where the factories were becoming established. There was a huge influx of the workforce, changing from agricultural and rural kind of employment into factory employment, and there were sort of people streaming into the cities to find work in the new factories. And of course, as you may be aware, the conditions in factories were not great, and people were exploited from
very, very young ages, and it became so bad that in the end laws had to be made to protect the workforce. And so the Factories Act came in, and originally it came in to prevent children under the age of 18 working for more than 12 hours a day. Goodness me, it's terrible, isn't it? But that was the initial factory, or one of the initial kind of features of the Factories Act, was to prevent the exploitation of children in the workplace. And the Factories Act actually goes through several iterations through the 19th century, and amendments are made to it. Yes, by the time we come to the 1890s and Mrs. Butterworth, it applies to keeping women under 18 working for more than 10 hours a day. Now, it's important to remember that at this point, the school leaving age was actually 14, so it was perfectly acceptable for young girls under the age of 18 to be employed in work. That was perfectly normal at this time. But you couldn't force them to work for more than 10 hours a day if they were under 18. The other interesting fact to note is that for the Factories Act to apply to Mrs. Butterworth, she had to have a workroom, a dedicated workspace where she was employing more than 5 people. So straight away, that gives you an insight into her level of business. She's not just a woman working on her own, or with a second hand, another woman helping her out or anything like that. And she's not sending work out to outside workers either. She has a workroom where she's employing people to work for her. And she has more than 5 of them. So this is quite a substantial business. And when you look at the buildings and the locations on Southport where she has her establishment, and I'll come on to some more of this in a minute because it changes. You suddenly realise these are big Victorian buildings, multiple stories tall, with shop frontage. This isn't a small enterprise. This is a big business, essentially. It's incredible. So coming back to the whole employing these young women, these under 18 year olds, in her workroom. When you then go and look back at the dress and focus on the little features that we discussed, the whip stitching of all the seams, of all the raw edges, the making the covering all the boning and putting the flossing in before it's then put into the bodice, turning up the hems being hand stitched. That's when you suddenly realise who's doing the work here. It's not Mrs. Butterworth hand sewing all of these. No. This is the young girl she's employing in her workroom. And, it's just such a fascinating snapshot of a glimpse into a business like this in the 19th century, which, oh my goodness, it excited me so much. And, I want to hope that Mrs. Butterworth wasn't exploiting these young girls and that she wasn't essentially a cow to work for. I really hope she wasn't. I'd like to think she, fair but strict, a woman running a business. I'm sure you didn't cross her, but I'd like to think that she learned her lesson being fined a couple of times, and there was no other evidence of her being fined at another point later than that. So I'm hoping it was just on a couple of occasions that she got caught out. But one of the interesting things about the first time when she got caught in 1891, when she wasn't displaying a copy of the Factories Act in her workroom, that was part of the law. You had to display copies of the Factories Act in your workroom so your workers knew what their rights were. There's in one of the newspapers, it was reported that her husband Samuel had defended her by saying that they'd had the decorators in, and the decorators had taken the Factories Act down from the wall, but it was put up again a few days later, and I just thought that's just what an excuse. Some excuses just don't go old, do they? We find Mrs. Butterworth advertising her business, and we have a notice here in the newspaper of her removal, which basically means she's moving premises, and she's advertising the fact that she's moving to her new premises, and she's promoting herself as a high-class milliner and dressmaker. And we have the address of her new premises, where she's moving to, next door to the new post office. And straight away we scurried off to Google Maps to go and have a look, and we found the building. It still exists. It's still there next to the new post office, and it's this beautiful, I think it's a four-story building,
And there's a little bit of a green kind of park space in front of it. It's kind of set back off the main thoroughfare of Lord Street, but it's still very much, it's right next to the post office, which would have been, as a post office is today, an absolute hubbub of the community. So she was right there in the middle of the high street with this wonderful, wonderful business, a high-class milliner and dressmaker. It's just fabulous. And when you look at the building and you look at the windows and the stories going up, and you can see the small little window at the top there, is that one of the workrooms where she had her employees working, making these wonderful dresses. And I'd be fascinated to know exactly, to go inside that building 120 years ago and to know exactly what it was like. I mean, what was she doing, Mrs. Butterworth? How was she actually involved in the business? Was she actually involved in dealing with the clients? Was she kind of front of house? If you went to have you went to Mrs. Butterworth's establishment, did you speak to Mrs. Butterworth? Or did you speak to somebody kind of underneath her who did the consultations for you? And did she do any of the sewing? I mean, she must have done at some point, clearly, to have an understanding of dressmaking. I mean, you would presume. And yeah, it's just fascinating, who are the girls who were working for? Who was doing the hand sewing? Who were the machine sewers? Because we know a good part of the gown is machine sewn. And yeah, just to see that workroom, it would have been amazing. And it's just so fascinating to have this little tiny glimpse into her establishment. But then we move forward into the 1900s, and she's still going. This business is still running. She's still a high-class dressmaker in Southport. But we find an advertisement for her where so this business is growing. It's, and you think obviously in the Edwardian area, this is 1904, 1906, I can't remember, I'll check the dates, but 1904 and 1906, she's expanding her business again. And the Edwardian era is, of course, as we know, the epitome of, of wealth and status. If you had money, having fashionable garments, where you're changing umpteen times a day for different, you need outfits for every different social occasion, and if you have the money to do that. And the most fascinating thing about this advert is that she has gone from being Mrs. Butterworth, the dressmaker, she is now Madame Butterworth, modiste. and she's exhibiting in her new premises the latest fashions from London and Paris, which is just I shouldn't laugh. I mean, I don't want to do any kind of injustice to the level of the work that she's producing, because it clearly, this is a very, very good dressmaking establishment. I'm not knocking that at all, but it's just the fact that she's jumped on the advertising bandwagon that kind of blossomed in the 1890s and the early 1900s, where she's bigging herself up. She's not French. I mean, I don't think she's French for a name like Butterworth. But it's that whole, she's upselling the business. She's making the business appear as best as it can be. And at this time, if you had the money, you went to Paris for your fashions. If you think about the American heiresses that were coming over to Europe and marrying into the British royal family at that time, Downton Abbey, that kind of era. When Cora comes over and marries Lord Grantham, she's one of those American heiresses. And she would have gone to Paris to buy her fashions before spending the season in London to catch her husband. And that's what she's trying to emulate in Southport on the northwest coast of England. But she's appealing to that sense of people. Yeah, that sense of people wanting the best that they can afford, and wanting that little slice of the exoticism of Parisian fashions. And this is the time of the great fashion houses like Lucille and Worth, and in a few short years, Paul Poiret is going to burst onto the scene with his scandalous fashions. It's that kind of era, which is just it's so fascinating to see that kind of on a more local level, if you know what I mean, and how a small town dressmaker essentially is trying to fit into that world. Yeah, as I said, I don't for a minute knock the stuff that she's making. She's making beautiful, beautiful high-end quality garments, but it's just so
amusing to our modern eyes, but also fascinating to have this little glimpse, as I say, into this this world of her business. So what else can I tell you about Mrs. Butterworth? Yeah, so Mrs. Butterworth, she was married, as I said, to her husband Samuel, and he sadly dies in 1904. But she carries on with her business, and as I said, we found her on the 1911 census, where she's still her profession is a milliner and dressmaker. At this point, she's head of her household. I say her husband has died. She hasn't remarried or anything like that. So she's head of her household in 1911, and she still has 5 children living at home with her and 2 servants. But we actually think she may have had 10 children. And then you think, oh my goodness, 10 children. And she's running a business. That's an incredible feat. Goodness me. Be a wife, mother to 10 children and run a business. Wish I could meet her. Which leads me on. We think we've got a photograph of her. We think we've found her on Ancestry.com. There's a record which relates to her husband Samuel, and there's a family photograph. And we think this might be her. We think this is Mrs. Butterworth. So Mrs. Butterworth actually dies in 1925, and we see the notice in the newspaper where she leaves the business to her eldest son, who is actually a partner in the business at this point. But she leaves effects worth £5,000 in 1925, which in today's money is an estate worth about 300,000 British pounds. And so that is the story of Mrs. Butterworth. And as I say, it was a fascinating glimpse into a dressmaking business at the turn of the century, and the changes that fashions went through in that period. So from the late 1900s, 1890s, through into the 1910s. And what's interesting, in 1924 we find the Butterworth family business, which is now J and F Butterworth. J for Jane and F is for her son. So he's obviously taken over the business, but now he's a Singer sewing machine agent. So the dressmaking business has probably ceased under not having the guidance of Mrs. Butterworth to do that side of things. So her son is now running a Singer sewing machine agency, which just kind of epitomises the changes that the dressmaking and the fashion industry sees through the 1910s and into the 1920s. Mass production, department stores, and that kind of thing become much more of a thing. The local dressmaker, you no longer need to go to her for every little thing. You know, you can buy it much more cheaply at the local department store where it's been mass produced, or you can now afford to buy a Singer machine or rent a Singer sewing machine. Do check out my video on my original 1923 Singer sewing machine, where I attempt to treadle sew for the first time ever, but I also tell you a little bit about the history of the machine and the cabinet that it's mounted in. You know, home dressmaking becomes much more of a thing in the 1920s than it did previously, because machines are much more readily available and more affordable, and it's just that whole shift in the fashion industry, but also in social history as well, which absolutely fascinates me, this time period in history. And I'm just so excited that just from this dress and this one name in this dress, we've just gone down this whole rabbit hole of history. Anyway, that's that probably took a lot longer than I thought, so I do apologise for keeping you longer. But anyway, back to the original video. Well, I hope you found that interesting. I know I certainly did. It's fascinating going inside, you know, vintage Victorian bodices, and you know, seeing how they're made, seeing how they've been adjusted, you know, seeing things like the boning channels and the flossing and the little stitch details. It's truly wonderful, and this dress is a remarkable survivor, and I'm so privileged to have it in my collection. I'm so excited that I've been able to share it with you guys. So I do hope you have found it interesting.
I'd love to know your thoughts on it as well. What's your favourite little detail on it? Or do you just have any questions? Just pop them in the comment section down below. And say if you have been watching this as part of the premiere on the day this video is released, then thank you so much for being involved. And I hope I've answered some of your questions. But if not, I will go through and answer as many as I can afterwards as well, and going forward in the future if you want to drop me a comment down below. So once again, thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed this, please do give the video a thumbs up, because that really helps my channel out. And again, if you would like to subscribe to my channel so you can be notified when my next video goes out, that again will give my channel a really great boost, and I'd love to have you as one of my followers follow along with all my other sewing adventures and delving into the exciting world of costume history. If you are watching this as part of the premiere or very soon after it goes out, this is my last video of 2021. So I will see you all in my next video, which will be in 2022. Who knows where that year will take us? Lots and lots of sewing adventures, I hope. But yeah, I hope you will join me, and I will see you there. Take care, guys. Bye!